So now I want to talk about the dream time, which is another concept of Hansen's. Robin Hansen, the economist, who came up with the Age of M and prediction markets and so on, right? So dream time is really something that was taken from the Australian Aborigines, and he repurposed it because the Australian Aborigines really did have a far different meaning for this. But anyway, the dream time is this time in which we have an illusion of safety because we seem to be evolving through means that are not natural selection. And yet we don't actually notice. We delude ourselves into thinking that we are making linear progress towards certain values, towards a certain morality, towards culture, towards art. And this is what Sam Harris would have you believe, or Steven Pinker, people like this, champions of humanism or some kind of version of moral progress like that. They believe that we are just on this linear trajectory, and it has been human nature to just discover through reason that some things are better than others. And so this is what the Enlightenment afforded us, and that's the general story. Whereas the more plausible story, according to Robin Hansen, and which I agree with, is that actually, in the same way that in biology, when you don't actually have natural selection, right? Natural selection is when you cross out all of these losers who are non adaptive, and then only the good ones survive. Only the ones who can actually adapt to their situation survive. And so natural selection is that which causes these X's. What is causing the X's? We call that selection pressures, right? When you don't have selection pressures, you actually still get evolution. You still get evolution, but it occurs through different means. For example, gene drift. So your distribution still moves to the side. It still moves just in some direction because it just moves. It'll move there or it'll move there, and it's really just pretty random. There's still evolution, but it's not really that one thing is more adaptive than the other. And so you should expect this to also happen not just with genes, but also with memes. So memes are our ideas, our cultural tokens, everything about our culture, including art, the language we use, the things we can afford to express, our fashion, for instance, and the fact that we even put that we give any attention to things like fashion, to give to things like even politics, right? Politics is not about politics. It's about signaling your loyalty and your particular affiliation with particular tribes, as opposed to actually caring about the real outcomes. And there's tons of evidence for this. I mean, if people really cared about the real outcomes, they would be far more willing to compromise with those who are not their obvious political allies, and they would also be far more willing to actually engage in debates about the policy itself. Whereas most people have absolutely no interest and no knowledge about the technicalities of policy, but instead, but love to have conversations that are sort of abstract and big and long term, and that really bring out their colors, that really bring out what they feel, and therefore their tribal allegiances. The same is true with health. We can afford to actually not care about our health. And this is just a sad fact of just how the human works. If over 90% of our human behavior is actually just signaling, so this is 90%, and this is signaling in a rich society because we can afford it, then you should expect that we don't actually care about health either, and we don't. People claim that they care about their loved ones, that they care about themselves, that they go to the doctor for these reasons, but the evidence shows otherwise. People actually care about showing that they care, which is far different from really caring. Showing that you care is far more important to us than genuinely caring about our health. So it tends to be people who are particularly strange who can notice this and genuinely care. And so that's why the most recent person who donated the most money most recently to Sense Research Foundation, which is at the forefront of actually doing something about aging, was none other than a very strange person, which is Vitalik Buterin, the founder of Ethereum, and he donated 4 million in Ether to the foundation. And so Sense Research Foundation has categorized aging into 7 different aspects of aging, the 7 deadly sins. So you have mitochondrial mutations, you have extracellular damage. This includes things like amyloid plaques that form outside of your nerve cells when you're getting Alzheimer's, and you have intracellular aggregates. This includes things that cannot be broken down by the enzymes that you contain in your lysosomes, whether these lysosomes are in your macrophages or wherever else in the body. You have so much junk that you cannot break down because it accumulates in there when you don't have the proper enzymes. So the idea would be to inject the proper enzymes, or perhaps in the future even genetically engineer them so that we naturally produce them. That's another thing. But we also have extracellular matrix stiffening, and the matrix stiffening, this is caused by what are called glycated end products. So glycation is when you have sugars bonding to proteins. So as we know, we have different macromolecules in our body. We have lipids, we have carbohydrates, we have proteins. When you have proteins and sugars and heat, you essentially just get, in the same way that you get a glazed sort of crispy skin on a turkey or something, because you have sugar and you have proteins and you have heat. That's exactly what is happening to your body, and that's why it is stiffening with age. That could be broken with AGEs, and not a lot of people care or know that they can break their glycated end products with AGEs, right? Like, who the hell really cares about fighting aging? Who the hell cares about their real health? Not very many people, not even in policy. The people in policy are confused about what people really want. What is it that people really want? People want to show that they care. So people have done studies on populations and asked them, like, how much would you pay for information that might save your life? There's a certain threat that this particular surgery is going to kill you, essentially, and there is information that we have, and we are willing to disclose it if you're going to pay a certain amount. And not a lot of people were willing to pay a lot for their own lives, for knowledge about their lives. In what neighborhood did we have the better hospitals with the highest survival rates? People weren't willing to pay a lot of money for it, and the people who did pay for it ended up not even using the information anyway. So that shows that humans don't really care about their health, period. And people in policy don't care about preventative medicine, which is the whole idea. Preventative medicine is the whole idea. And obviously, if we could just destroy the system and rework it a la Aubrey de Grey, and just establish an engineering sort of repair style to health, in which we were just going to go and have our rejuvenation therapies every few months across all these 7 domains, then that would be even better. And I didn't even list all 7. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's the other one? Cell loss, when you're not being replaced. So, for example, you have Parkinson's, right? And you have this area of the brain called the substantia nigra, which is called substantia nigra because that's Latin for black substance. And so we have these little black neurons that are lost with age, and the way to fix that is through stem cells. So stem cells are obviously the solution to cell loss. If you have cells that are not being replaced, well, just replace them. That's pretty intuitive. People get that. But you also have the sort of antithesis to that, and not a lot of people realize that some cells actually have to die, and they're not dying when they should be dying. And cell death is called apoptosis. When a cell commits suicide, for good reason. It's apoptosis, and sometimes they are not committing apoptosis, so we need suicide gene therapy to cause them to commit suicide and stop clogging up and taking up space that they shouldn't be taking up because it's impairing the tissue function. So we have that. What else do we have? We have cancer. Cancer occurs when you have immortal cells that keep replicating. They keep replicating because they just have their chromosomes, which are these things which are what contain our DNA, but they are wrapped around spindles of protein. At the ends, they have these things called telomeres, and the telomeres are kind of the fuel that allow for the replication of cells. However, the telomeres eventually run out, and this would be a good thing in the case of cancer if they run out, because then cancer would run out. It would never go out of control. But as it stands, cancer has unlimited fuel. These telomeres never run out. So the cancer can be immortal and replicate and kill you. So the idea is to cap off the ability for cancer to lengthen its telomeres permanently. So that's our idea, is that we have 7 deadly sins, and if we actually took an approach to the human body in the same way that we can repair a house or we could repair a car constantly, we can also repair the body constantly. Yeah, the body is different, but at the end of the day, it's just a physical machine in the same sense. In any case, the human body has self-repair mechanisms already that would help us. So that's the only sense in which it is different, that it has, just loops and loops of spaghetti code acting in symphony to repair itself already. And so we would only have to go in at the damage level and repair that damage. People aren't doing this because they exist in the illusion of safety even on an individual level. So you don't just exist in the illusion of safety at the sort of macro historical level that, we were hunter-gatherers and then we were agriculturalists, and after that, we afforded our riches. And then, we now find ourselves as a society in a time where we don't know if in the future we're going to return to subsistence levels, which may be the case, and that's we should be prepared for that. But it also happens at the very individual level. As an individual, you don't realize that you're going to go in age and die, and that this decrepitude is waiting for you. It's like out here. So you're in the walls, you're the sheep, and the Titans are coming. These are the walls, and Attack on Titan is going to happen. But you don't care, right? Because you're afraid, and you act like it's not going to happen. So that's the issue that I see with our lives today. That it's only very strange people who are aware of signaling as a main motive around us, and we don't buy into that particular framework, which is the most bought into. In other words, people who are just not neurotypical because they can't buy into the people around them. They actually have to analyze, why do people do what they do, and what actually makes sense from whether a selfish perspective or from an altruistic perspective. And we should take an altruistic perspective given open individualism. So if physics actually implies that there is no way to carve out a particular self, which is a particular sort of screen of consciousness, which is particular to a self, and instead we are all experiences anyway, we should be particularly altruistic and understand our true motives so that we can circumvent them and do what is actually best for us.